All right, let's go to the Detroit Pistons now, Mort, who have a similarly bleak outlook after. Jeremy Grant was a great find for them. Your most improved player, Jeremy Grant, was a great find for them. Otherwise, they swallowed $30 million almost on their cap sheet next year just to get out of Blake Griffin's contract. So this is, like Houston, you can safely pencil the Pistons in as one of the worst teams in the NBA next year. With that said, Mort, we didn't really see a lot out of Killian Hayes. He only played 23 games. He started 15 of them. He missed most of the season with an injury. He's, the number 7 pick in this past draft. What do you make of this somewhat lost rookie season for him?
Well, so here's the thing. I've already said this a lot during last year before the pre-draft before the draft process. I spoke to people over here who basically said that he was helping himself a lot by going to Germany. Obviously, he's French, played in the French league. But by going to Germany, which is a less athletic league, probably one of the worst athletically driven leagues in the entire world, that helped him because he's not one of those guys who will overpower you athletically, if you catch my drift. He is more of a thinker. And that concerned me a little bit because he's so young, which made me think, there's going to be a long learning period. There's going to be at least a learning curve of 2 to 3 years. What he showed this year has only cemented that belief for me. I'm not saying that he's going to turn into a bad NBA player by any stretch, but objectively, he had a horrific rookie season. And obviously, he also got injured, and there were definitely some issues there. But just in terms of his on-court production, it's been dreadful. He's been, as advertised from a playmaking perspective, which is great, but in terms of being a shot maker, he's just got such a long way to go. So for me, and I mean, I'm looking at him, and this summer has to be all about just getting stronger, getting more physical, getting that jump shot real tight, because he is never going to be someone who athletically outproduces his direct counterpart. Mm-hmm. He will be someone who thinks out the game. So he needs to lean into that. He needs to become someone like the point guard version of Kyle Anderson. He needs to be someone who just comes into a game and decides, all right, these are my spots. These are the spots that I need to get to. These are the spots where I know I can be effective, and that's kind of it. So it's going to be a rough road ahead for him, but he is picking it up as of late. Yeah. I will give him that. Yeah. And I think he deserves credit for that. I think he even had a 21-pointer the other day, if memory serves.
Yeah, against the Bulls. 21 points, yep. 8 assists, 7 rebounds, 7 turnovers as well.
There you go. I mean, that was... I didn't see the game, so, I mean, look, that's just very, very steady production. If you can get more out of that, great. That's something that you're looking for. It's that kind of production. But I think it'll take a while. So I don't think we can realistically go into his game and say, well, did this and that. He is still a clump of raw clay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that begs the question, looking ahead to the offseason, should Detroit be looking for another point guard either in free agency or the draft, or should they, not be willing to give up on Killian, just, given the small sample size?
Well, I mean, it really depends, right? So if they, let's say they get number 2 or number 3, and then they really like Jalen Suggs at that point. Mm-hmm. Like, the presence of Killian Hayes shouldn't prevent you from going with the guy you want. And if that is Suggs, I think you should go for it. And then just kind of see if you can make it fit. I mean, Suggs, to be fair, Suggs kind of compares to like a combo guard instead, so you can theoretically make that fit work. Hayes is also 6'5", so those are going to be somewhat interchangeable. But I just wouldn't look at Killian Hayes and go, well, I firmly cement my position on as a full-time point guard here on this team moving forward. I think there is some room for improvement, and if they find a guy in the draft that they like better, go for it.
Yeah, I totally agree there. Let's go to their other notable pick from last year, Sekou Doumbouya, who it hasn't seemed to click for him quite yet. We knew he was a somewhat raw prospect coming into the draft. Raw high upside, kind of a project guy. Still only 20 years old, turned 20 in late December, so still super young as well. But he's now being blocked at the position by Jeremy Grant. He's also got, Saddiq Bey, Mason Plumlee, Isaiah Stewart to compete with for front court minutes. So what do you make of his outlook moving forward?
Yeah, so I had him number 4 on my big board last year, and I think he had a significantly better rookie season than he's had a sophomore season. I'm nervous at this point. I really am. He seems to be looking over his shoulder a lot. He seems to be not really secure in his own place on the team, and that can just be such a killer, especially for a young guy who needs the support and the backing of the entire coaching staff. Now, this isn't me commenting and saying that he doesn't have the support of the coaching staff, but he just plays a brand of basketball right now where you kind of look at it and going, he's insecure. And is that because of his play? Is it because he doesn't have the trust of those guys on the bench? I don't know. But at this point, I'm definitely concerned. I think he should have looked at least a little bit better. It's not that I expected him to have this major year 2 breakout, but I did anticipate him being better, and he hasn't been. So I guess 3rd year breakout tradition in play right now, and if he doesn't break out there, then we're in trouble.
He would satisfy all of your most improved player criteria because he is 1 spot away from being a lottery pick, and he will not be first or second year. So there you go. Giving you some potential fodder for next year's awards pods.
Oh, I am not going there quite yet. I love Sekou, but this year has been so discouraging that that would even be a stretch for me.
Yeah, that's fair. So let's go to a positive note more. We already hit Jeremy. We've talked about him a lot this year, how great he's been. Do you think they have any other long-term keepers on the roster? And I'm particularly thinking about their other 2 young picks from this past year, Saddiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't they be keepers? I mean, Saddiq has just been so steady as a shooter. I mean, he's canning almost 2.5 threes per game at 38%. He's not really playing a whole lot. Like, he's playing... Let me just look it up. If memory serves, at like 27, 28 minutes.
Yeah, it's about 27.
26.8. So, I mean, that's great production. I think he's one of those guys who could, when everything is said and done, sneak his way into an all-star game maybe in a couple of years. Like, I think the scoring volume is going to grow significantly higher. Isaiah Stewart is just fascinating to me. I thought he would come in and struggle to earn minutes, but he's just been so energetic. He's been willing to take a lot of different shots. He's been a shot blocker. He's been a rebounder. I liked him coming into the NBA, but I wasn't, absolutely certain that he would break through in a rotation. To his credit, he absolutely has. He's only missed 2 games. I think he is going to be their starting big, whatever capacity you want to throw him in, as to 4, as to 5, whatever, moving forward. He's going to be one of those guys who just is a full-timer. So yeah, definitely stick with Isaiah and Saddiq Bey for sure.
Yeah, I thought Steve Jones of the Dunker Spot podcast had it was either just one tweet or a thread about him the other day, where he's kind of highlighting some of the developments he's made this year, where, he was just kind of limited in what he was doing, especially offensively earlier in the season. And because he's gotten so much playing time, especially once the wheels came off of Detroit's season, you've seen him really start to expand his game. I love the energy he brings to the floor as well. I think Detroit should be very happy with those 2 guys, especially considering both weren't lottery picks. Like, finding, even if they're not, I think Saddiq is going to be a starting caliber player there, and Isaiah Stewart could be as well. But even if they, move to the bench once Detroit gets a little bit better, finding 2 legit rotation players in the mid-first round is not easy. Like, a lot of those guys bust. So, even if Killian doesn't pan out as they hoped, they went 2 or 3 last year. It's pretty good. So, yeah, I think they do have some nice young talent Like the cupboard is not as dry in Detroit as I would say it is in Houston right now.
I mean, I hear you on that, but at the same time, then you would always make that whole, revisionist history where you go back and go, well, if they just took Tyrese Halliburton instead of Killian Hayes, right?
Sure.
Then they would have been 3 for 3.
Yeah.
Well, that scene would have been super encouraging.
If 14 teams took Giannis Antetokounmpo in 2013, they feel a lot better too.
Yeah, totally agree.
So Detroit, it looks like they have $88.2 million in guaranteed contracts on their books. I'm going to go out on a limb and say they are not picking up the option, or it's like $2.4 million of Corey Joseph's $12.6 is guaranteed.
Yeah, by Corey.
Yeah, Rodney Magruder's completely not guaranteed. They're not picking up those deals. So, they'll have some money to splash around in free agency. Do you think they should try to take a swing on someone?
Yeah, is there another Plumlee brother available?
Yes, I mean, I know multiple Plumlees have played basketball.
Right? Maybe a Seller as well?
Oh, yeah.
Cody Seller, he's a free agent after this season, if memory serves.
There we go.
Let's get all the Plumlees and the Sellers together and just go nuts.
Oh, God. That sounds like the most unlikable team in the NBA, and that includes an NBA that has the Brooklyn Nets.
Oh, and then let's also bring back Tyler Hansbrough and his brother Ben.
Just an all-in-the-family team? I like it.
Let's get all the white college superstars back for once.
JJ Redick's a free agent this year, too.
Oh, God. And then could you just imagine Jeremy Grant, who said, I want to come here because there's a black GM and a black head coach.
Oh, God.
And then they go out and just sign all these washed up white guys who would just be like, nah, man, I ain't playing that game.
I changed my mind. Denver wasn't so bad. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think they're going to be... Again, it's like Houston, right? You're not going to get a superstar free agent to come to a team that finished with the second worst record in the NBA. But if you could go after... I don't even know that I would go after one of the big name restricted free agents. But if you can get some interesting guys on the cheap, we'll hit OKC next episode. But I would look at what teams like OKC are doing, where you get some young guys on multi-year contracts, cheap multi-year contracts. If you can get non-guaranteed years on them, even better. A lot of teams have been playing that card at the end of this season, and I approve of it every time. It is always smart. Because if those guys pan out, then you have a legit rotation player for a very cheap price who you could either use, just to make your team better, or flip them for a legit trade asset. Otherwise, if they don't pan out, their contract isn't guaranteed and it won't cost you anything. So you win either way.
Yep. That is true. Before we move on, just a quick shout out to Scott Hale, the CEO of Basketball News. He and I were DMing quite a lot about the Pistons. He is all in on Jalen Green. So if I didn't bring up Jalen Green as a possibility for the Pistons, his hands might reach out of my phone to choke me. So... shout out to Scott Hale, who desperately wants Jalen Green. I'm not sure it's the best to pick for them. If they they win number one, I think you got to go Cade.
Sure.
But if they finish with the fifth pick or fourth even. Yeah, I could see it. My number 1, 2, and 3 is still Cade, Mobley, and Suggs. But I mean, at the same time, you can also make the argument that both Green and Kuminga, they played in NBA regulation courts and the entire atmosphere was NBA compared to college. So maybe because of that, they're just more ready. I don't know. It's worth a thought.
Yeah, and the Pistons right now have a slight lead over the Cavaliers for the number 2 spot in the lottery, which means they could fall no lower than 6. So yeah, they're likely looking at a top 5 pick. So maybe Scott Hale's dream will come true.